Hello, my fellow Hulk fans. It's Jerry Rasco with you today. And yes, we are going to be looking at more Incredible Hulk comics together. Now, specifically, we're going to be looking at Tales to Astonish number 76 today. So you may be saying to yourself, wait a minute, if we're talking about the Incredible Hulk, why are we looking at Tales to Astonish and not the Incredible Hulk series? So if you're new, you can go back and check out some of the older videos that we have, but what happened is the original series of The Incredible Hulk did not last very long. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it only lasted about 6 issues. And then it ended up getting canceled, and the character was moved to Tales to Astonish, which is a book that features 2 stories. At this point in time, the first half of the book is the Submariner, and then the second half of the book is the Incredible Hulk. So excited to talk to you about this issue because we've got some different members of the creative team joining us for the first time, and somebody who is an iconic artist. So I'm very excited to talk about them and give a little history on that individual for you. And just in general, really looking forward to seeing where the story goes with the Hulk. Now, if you are new, appreciate you stopping by and checking out the video. We are making a push towards 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And as of the recording of this video, we are almost halfway there. So that is support that I have to give all thanks and appreciation to all the people out there that have been clicking that subscribe button, sharing the videos, getting people to join. Thank you so much for doing that. Where if you're new, the reason I think you should click the subscribe button, 1, of course, it helps us get to that number, but 2, we have an art giveaway going on. So when we hit 1,000 subscribers, I will be giving away 6 pieces of original artwork, each one going to 1 randomly drawn subscriber. So if you are a subscriber, when we hit that time, you could win one of these 6 pieces of artwork. So we'll show them here. We have the Amazing Spider-Man. We have the X-Men, we have the Incredible Hulk, we have the Avengers, and then we also have Captain America and the Fantastic Four. So all of these are celebrating the review series that we have here on the channel with Captain America and Fantastic Four. They'll be debuting soon, again, as of the recording of this video. So check those out, hit that subscribe button, and become part of the community that we're building here. So thank you so much for doing that. That all out of the way, let's head over and check out this comic. So this is the cover to Tales to Astonish number 76. And to be honest, we're not going to spend really much time on it here because it doesn't feature the Incredible Hulk. So, but again, if you're new, Tales to Astonish being a book that has 2 stories in it, they used to do, when we first started talking about the Hulk and the Hulk was added to the book, the cover would be split. There'd be 2 drawings, one on, say, on top, or one on the left, one on the right, etc. And it would feature both characters from both stories. Then they started doing more, say, 2/3 of the cover featuring one character, and then sort of a smaller image of the other character on the page on the cover somewhere. Now we're at a point where we're alternating covers every month. So last month featured a Hulk cover. This month features a Submariner cover. Next month, again, back to Hulk. So that's what's going on. So since we're here to talk about the Hulk, we are not going to spend any time kind of breaking down this cover. We're going to go ahead and skip to the actual Hulk story. So here we go. So let's talk real quick about what we always talk about here. This is a scanned PDF copy. So I love this format. Marvel did this with a number of different comics and characters in the early 2000s. They got a hold of all of these original printing, these original books. You can see the staple marks in the page there at the top. Put them on a flatbed scanner, scanned them, put the files onto DVD, either CD-ROMs or DVD ROMs, discs that you could purchase, bring home, and then view on your computer, which is exactly what we're doing here. But this is the perfect format for this review and what we're doing, as opposed to maybe setting up cameras and overhead and flipping pages, and then you get glare and all kinds of stuff. I really love this format. It just works great. So this is what we're looking at. Let's talk about the creative team. This is a comic from 1965, and we are still looking at a couple of the original team. So you still have Stan Lee writing, scripting the comic. We have layouts by Jack Kirby. So we've talked about this on the channel before. Layouts mean Jack Kirby went through, took the script, and broke down what each page should be showing, how many panels on a page, what the general flow of the story visually is, and then somebody else comes in with as a penciler and actually draws all the details. So in this case, where is the rock? Where are the shadows? Where do we put hatch marks? Drawing in the guns, the soldiers, all that kind of stuff. They're putting in those final details in pencil, and that is, and we'll get to this in a second, that is Scott Edward per credits. And then the inker is Mickey DeMeo per credits. So if you've been following the channel and watching these Hulk videos, you know that Mickey DeMeo is a pen name for Mike Esposito. So this is the guy who's been both drawing sometimes and inking, or both, the series for quite some time. So we're still dealing with the same inker. So there's a lot of the visual artwork that's going to feel very consistent with what we've seen so far. Scott Edward is, now I'm sure there's somebody named Scott Edward, but in this case, Scott Edward is not a real person. Scott Edward is a pen name for comic book icon Gil Kane. So if you follow comics at all, you should probably know the name Gil Kane. That should ring a bell. Let's talk about Gil Kane very quickly. Gil Kane is an artist that worked a lot. Like most artists of the sort of golden and silver ages of comics, started out very early doing things like war comics, cowboy comics, westerns, romance stories, etc. Obviously before what we consider the modern age of superheroes here in the early 60s. But when that happened, Gil Kane was in the thick of it. So he was part of the DC talent that took some of those original old golden age characters and reinvented them for what we call the modern or silver age. And one of the biggest ones he did is Green Lantern. So when we think of Green Lantern, most of us probably think of, what you see in cartoons, comics, movies. We think of Hal Jordan character, that green, black, and white costume, which is very simple, very sleek. That is a Gil Kane design. He co-created the Silver Age version of Green Lantern, as well as the Atom. Then he also, for Marvel, co-created Iron Fist and Adam Warlock, both of whom have featured in MCU properties, would be that television shows or movies. And then later on, he also worked on books like the Teen Titans, Plastic Man, Hawk and Dove. Of course, here we have the Hulk. And Gil Kane became the regular interior artist for Spider-Man in the 70s. So if you're following along with our Spider-Man series, right now we're looking, again, as the recording of this video, we're reviewing John Romita, his work on Spider-Man. Well, Gil Kane is going to take over at some point and become the regular penciler for Spider-Man. So obviously this guy is an icon. Gil Kane, a master in things like character design, great, simple, but iconic costumes, and again, great storytelling. So here he's working off of Jack Kirby layouts, so there's not as much flexibility. There is still a lot of the Jack Kirby sensibilities in the storytelling, but it's very fun to see how that blends together. So that's our creative team. Real quick, we'll do a very high level recap of the story, where we got to this point. The Hulk has been sent forward in time. Basically, he was heading towards Washington, D.C. to try to help Rick Jones. Rick Jones has been taken into custody by the U.S. military, as they understand there's a link between the Hulk, Banner, and him, but they can't find the Hulk, and they couldn't find Banner, and so they are trying to leverage Rick Jones to find out what's going on. So the Hulk went to save him, and the military used a weapon of Bruce Banner's own design that used light waves as a method of time travel, and he was projected forward into the 25th century. So there are a bunch of futuristic soldiers that recognize the Hulk of legend. They know who he is, and immediately the fight begins. So we jump right into the story, which I absolutely love. It's a great splash page. We've got a nice low angle, so the horizon line is low. It's about kind of where the Hulk's knees are, so we're looking up into his face. It makes the Hulk seem that much larger. That giant rock he's holding seem that much bigger. But then we also have these futuristic guns in the foreground, as well as these kind of post-apocalyptic soldiers. I would categorize these guys as Mad Max meets action figures. It kind of reminds me of Mad Max meets maybe He-Man figures or something like that. So a very interesting combination there, but a good splash page to start things off. The Hulk surrounded, lifting up this giant rock, looking big, mean, and menacing. That's exactly what we want to see out of the Hulk. There could be a little bit more dark shadows. That's always one of my biggest qualms, I think. Again, if you follow any of these series, you'd know, like, certainly Mike Esposito's inks can be a little bit thin at times. I don't find the depth of some of the inking to where I would like it, especially with the lack of shadows. Shadows and depth not only help round out the form and give you a sense of three-dimensionality, but it also is very important to the mood, and we'll see that later as well. So this is a little bit light for me, but overall pretty good. So yeah, good splash page to start off, and then big panels jumping right into the action, which I like that a lot. At this stage of the game, early 1960s, there is a penchant for lots of little mini panels to get in all that story time. Here we've got big action panels, and I think that's a real benefit for a character like the Hulk that deals in not only big action, right, throwing giant rocks, moving tanks and all this kind of stuff around, but also he's a big imposing figure as well. So that's really nice. The future soldiers clearly have Kirby designs. You see things like no two soldiers are exactly the same. There's these weird helmets with all kinds of different fins on top, or little wings sticking out. Every gun is slightly different. It's just very iconic in terms of Jack Kirby and his futuristic tech design. Let's put it that way. You see a lot of this sort of look as well, I think, repeating with his later New Gods work, which I believe was in the 70s with DC Comics. So again, we're getting that Jack Kirby sensibility, but maybe a little more wide open cinematic view that you would get from somebody obviously like Gil Kane. So they launch a giant missile at him called the Delta missile, and I think it's very funny that there's a missile launcher. I took it as this missile was bigger because the cannon that it's coming out of is much larger, and there are smaller missiles around it. Maybe this is supposed to be one of these other missiles, and it kind of rotates in and fires out, and it's larger because it's closer. But it just kind of looks like this would be a giant missile, and there's a missile launcher full of small missiles behind it. The other thing that is super Jack Kirby that you get are these sort of geometric shapes, like circles, half circles, tubes and lines and stuff, but also added at weird angles. Like you've got this front fork here of this small tires as they wheel this thing into place, but then the front fork has little tires on the side to support that as well. So again, kind of funny and interesting Jack Kirby tech. Like it's highly recognizable. When you see it, you know exactly who did it. The Hulk stands his ground, takes the hit from the missile. He's stunned, but not killed. And one of the things I like when we get to page 2 here and we get moving with this action, all the action up to this point is moving from left to right. That is very important because as Western readers, we move from left to right as we read across. So it's really important in terms of showing energy, forward progress, and movement that our visual imagery moves from left to right as well. Now, once we get down here, the king kind of He realizes the Hulk has not been destroyed. He wants him captured. He wants him studied. So he's now facing the left, and that is putting a halt and a halt to that momentum, right? To that action. It's like, slow down. We're going to capture this guy. So I like that. That's a nice, subtle, again, visual storytelling strategy to have this action and movement going in one direction, and then you change directions, and that slows things down, which is great. And it's exactly what happens. So we got another crazy, wacky mechanical design shows up, and this thing uses gravity waves to immobilize the Hulk. He's awake, he's not unconscious, but he cannot move. The gravity field is holding his body completely rigid, and then he falls. And at first I thought it was kind of funny, like he's so big and massive that when he falls, he kind of sinks into the ground, like he breaks the ground beneath him. It might be as well, so it could be that, or it could also be the fact that they're using this gravity effect, so maybe they're actually making him much heavier or feel much heavier than the gravity of the Earth, and so maybe that's part of why he sinks into the ground there as well. So kind of again, nice subtle storytelling to add that little detail. Could just have him laying on the ground, but having him sink in, you get that sense of impact and weight, so that's really nice there. Down here, we have a scene transition, and there's kind of three ways that you can do scene transitions. I've been talking about this a lot lately in my videos. Number one, you can do a page turn. So what we could have done is we could have ended the page with the Hulk on the ground. You turn the page, and now we've changed scenes, and we see the military searching for what happened to him when he got hit by this T-gun. They didn't know what it did, so they're looking for some sort of evidence. Is the Hulk destroyed? Was he blown miles away? Is he invisible? Like, they don't know what happened. So you could do a page turn. Number two, you could do a visual transition, and that would be having somebody laying on the ground, like the Hulk laying on the ground here, and then somebody in this panel also laying on that ground in sort of the same position. That's a visual transition from scene to scene, and you could do stuff like that. The third one is now I can't think of the words. Oh, it's a visual transition or a thematic transition. Been a long day. Thematic transition. What I mean by that is if somebody here in this panel where the Hulk is immobilized, if one of these soldiers was like, obviously we are the most powerful army in history, for no one has ever defeated the Hulk. And then somebody down here was like, wow, I mean, I think we are the first army in history that was able to defeat the Hulk. So two people saying similar things in different scenes is a thematic transition. This unfortunately has none of that. We just cut from the Hulk to what turns out to be the White House lawn. And my notes say the White House lawn needs some help. We know why it's not a bright, lush green, and that's because printing and coloring technology in 1965 really wasn't going to be conducive to having a bright green grass and then having the soldiers in all sorts of tones of green. It's all going to blend together into one big lump and mush. So in today's world with Photoshop and better printing technology where you can print millions of colors, you could do something like having the soldiers' uniforms maybe be more of a yellowish tone of green, where the grass could be more of a bluish tone of green, and that would help separate them even though they're all still green. So there's ways to do it, especially with today's technology. It's just this is what they could do in 1965, so I understand the choice. It just makes me laugh, like the White House lawn looks like it's dead. Somebody didn't water it. Now we cut to General Ross, and everybody's explaining that nobody knows exactly what happened, and he's got an answer to this, and it's finally nice to see General Ross get a taste of his own medicine. So he's yelling at everybody, and then somebody who is a rank above him comes in and chews him out. So fair enough. It's nice to see him get his comeuppance once in a while, because he is kind of a bully in terms of personality for the story. And then you've got, so they head off to go talk to Rick Jones, and obviously they want to show that they're going fast. And so we've got this image of the Jeep kind of literally leaping over the horizon line or the ground. This to me is cartoony. Now, this is what I mean when I say cartoony. Obviously, everything here that's being drawn is a cartoon in some format or another. When I say cartoony, what I usually mean is something along the lines of a Saturday morning cartoon on television or a newspaper strip cartoon. And those images that are used in those mediums are distilled down to the core elements and often use a lot of symbolism to represent things as opposed to trying to draw them as realistic things. Now, obviously, this stuff isn't realistic per se, but you look at like the General Ross. He has the hat is correct. That is what the military hat looks like. He's got his uniform. He's got a radio in his hand. That's realistic. So yes, the super sci-fi technology isn't, but the way the faces are drawn, they could be animated, they can even be stylized, but they're still within the realm of human beings. You don't have somebody that has a face that's 10 times as long as their body. That would be a monster or something, right? And it would be recognized as this is really weird. So when you see this and you have this Jeep leaping over the ground as it's going to show that it's going so fast, that's a symbol. That's a distilled down to what you would do. That's how you would show it in a newspaper comic strip to show that something is moving really fast. There are other ways you could do this. You keep those tires on the ground and you show the smoke or the dust coming off of those tires. You have General Ross is holding his hat, but maybe his hat is starting to blow off his head, and you have him kind of catching it a little bit further back. These are all things, like I said, where you could absolutely pick up the speed element of it without having to go to cartoony symbolism. Great establishing shot. This is a page turn, so we have a very good transition there. That is the right thing to do, so that's perfect. And we have this fortress, so we have an establishing shot. It sets up all the elements. There's a big burning volcano. There's guns. It's highly fortified. There's lots of people. It seems to be in this rocky valley. This is all stuff that you set up here, and then you don't have to keep drawing it over and over. We can just move to the Hulk being put into captivity in a dungeon. If you don't have this establishing shot, it now becomes a question of where is he? The last we saw him, he was here out in the open in the rocks. How far did they have to go? Where is this? And that's what the establishing shot does. So it's important when you change scenes and you're changing locations from an art standpoint, make sure you have that establishing shot. It doesn't always have to be as big as this, where it's like a half a page. You can often do a smaller establishing shot, but it's just enough so that we know where we are. Hulk is put into the dungeon, and here, again, this is what I was talking about, the shadows. Shadows not only inform the form of the Hulk, but also inform the mood. So what you've got here is the Hulk who is very light. There's a lot of light hitting him because there's no real shadows. His arm should be casting a shadow. Inside of his palm should be casting shadow. If the light's coming from above, then should be a lot of shadows underneath him. And just in general, you could add different shadows because we don't know where the light source is in a dungeon. Make it dark, make it gritty, put him in a dark place, in a dark presence of mind because he's been captured and now he's talking about how he's going to wreck everybody. So that's a thing where you could really go and add a lot of that sort of noir look to help set the mood, as opposed to just having a wide open, bright, colorful Hulk. Let's add some shadows and bring down that mood. So here we have him inside of the cage, the dungeon, the cell. And it took me a little bit to figure out what was going on here. So what I think is happening is he's standing in front of what would be like the cot or bed, and he's holding bars at the window, right? That classic, he's looking out the window holding the prison bars. But it's hard to read it as that. For one, you have the dialogue kind of covers up stuff. Two, the background through the window is the same color as the walls. So it doesn't read as an opening, it just reads as part of the wall, and there's pipes on the wall. Why is he holding the pipes? The other thing is now you've got this sort of futuristic prison bars. So instead of straight bars, this one is more bell-shaped, so it doesn't read as prison bars. Here's what I would have done. I would have taken this shot, meaning the distance we are from the Hulk, so we see most of the figure, and I would have put that in the panel number 1. He's looking at us. He has his fist raised. He's mad. That's fine. Then in panel number 2, this is where I would do the close-up, but I would show from outside the window looking in at his face, at that anger that as he's gripping those prison bars. So that way you get the real, like, he's, you know, you get that sense of the face, you get the whole thing, and it's much more clear that we're looking through those bars. So very simple change, but it absolutely, you know, does the job. And so now they take the Hulk and they bring him in front of the king. It's pretty nice. I like the overhead shot, kind of, again, establishing the size of this fortress. You got the crazy designs of the guards, and then they bring him in to see the king. And you've got a nice him in the foreground, Hulk in the background, again, looking pretty large, pretty massive compared to the people around him. Overall, pretty good stuff. Okay, and so here we go. The Hulk is not buying it, right? So basically the king, they know the Hulk, they know him from legend, they want him to fight their enemies, and they're like, we're gonna fight. And he's like, no, you're not gonna use me. So he's mad and he's gonna fight these guys now. But I like this image of the Hulk kind of getting mad, getting in the face of the king here. It's a good angle. It's a good, the anatomy is pretty good. The musculature is good. The face is good. So I'd like to see it a little larger. It's always my gripe with sort of stories of this era, is that I feel like sometimes there's just not enough big panels where it needs to be. Where everything's the same size, it's hard to emphasize something like the Hulk looming towards somebody or over somebody. The other thing here is, as he gets to the end, he rips up the floor. And they mentioned he tears up the stone floor and throws people to the side. Now, it could be a particularly solid stone floor. The problem is it's not really established very well. In the panels leading up to this, it just is a solid color. Solid yellow. There's a circle here, but there's not much in the way of design to tell us what is the floor. Here, there's nothing at all. It's just this orange background that doesn't separate between floor and wall, so we have no idea what that is. And then this highlight, where all of a sudden he's in a spotlight as the soldiers group around him, it's just a big yellow light. When you want to establish something is important to the plot, like stone, or let's pretend for a minute your hero is going to pick up a trash can and throw it at a bad guy, you need to set up that trash can ahead of time so that it doesn't just magically appear in their hand. That's important, right? And here, one of the things that you could do very simply is draw and render the floor in a way to show that it is stone. Now, they've done that here. Once it's ripped up, we see that it is stone. If you draw it and render it that way with cracks and seams and stuff like that, then you don't have to explain that he tears up the stone floor. We know it's the stone floor. It's also the reason why you want to make sure, as you are adding texture and detail to your objects, if something is metal, render it with smoother, clean lines. If something is rough like stone or wood, render it as stone or wood. Different rendering lines for different textures will help set things aside, set things apart from each other without having to worry so much and relying on things like color or just narration to tell everybody what it is. So that is really important. Let's see. So Hulk throwing people around, they bring out another kind of paralyzing ray, and so he's not having it. He leaps over it. Now, what I don't like about one of these things, and this is just a general qualm that I have, other than this king guy who has a clearly established design and look, all the other people are just random and are drawn differently in every single panel. So what I mean is, you have the guys show up with this paralyzing gun. There's this dude over here in sort of the orange and brown. He's got this sort of, I don't know what you call it, helmet. He's got a helmet with these goggles built into it. There's a guy here with horns. The guy who's pushing the giant cannon, he's got a green helmet and these wide sort of shoulder pads. None of these characters are in the next panel. The Hulk leaps over the the gun, and we see completely different characters being drawn. This guy who's working the gun, now he's got this big fin on top of his helmet and different kind of shoulder pads and blue arms. This guy has bare arms. We don't see the guy with the horns on his helmet. We don't see this guy over here with the goggles built into it. It's just different every time. Now, that's fine. Maybe part of it is to show that there's so many people, there's so many soldiers, you can't keep track. You're not going to see the same ones over and over. There's also, to be perfectly frank, there's an element of laziness to it. Now, if you had something you're trying to reference that you drew 12 issues ago or 13 issues ago, yeah, maybe you're going to miss those details. You drew this one panel ago. It's on the same page. Just reference what you drew and draw the same thing in the next panel. I mean, you're doing it from Hulk to Hulk. I mean, that's all of a sudden the Hulk doesn't have a shirt in one panel and shoes in the next panel and then just pants in the third panel. You're keeping that consistent. Keep your background characters consistent. It's just something that really drives me crazy. It's something I've noticed a lot about. Now, I know Jack Kirby isn't drawing these characters, but there's a good chance he kind of, I mean, these are very Kirby-esque designs we talked about in terms of the style, the elements, the types of shapes that he's using. So he may have kind of laid that out. And, you know, that's something that we've seen before that just is personal preference, kind of bugs me. Now, the other thing here is the Hulk is heading headfirst towards this wall. And they're all talking about this wall is 20 feet thick. There's no way he's going to get through. He's just going to hit himself against it. But suddenly in midair, he changes to being feet forward and kicks through the wall and then starts ripping it apart. Here's my problem. You don't need to do that. One, it's awkward. How does he go from one position to the other position in midair? That's a hard thing to do. Now, he's the Hulk. That's great. Why not just have him shoulder tackling into the wall here? And then I'm going to argue there's no need for this last panel. As we see, there's a hole. He's kicked a hole through the wall. So maybe he shoulder tackles a hole through the wall. And then you don't need to have him making the hole bigger because in the next page, it's not that big. So just go from panel 1, 2, 3, 4 to the next page. And here's why this is important. When you do that, you could very easily put this panel, because it's the exact same size, on this page right here. Now when I turn the page, so we've established what the outside looks like. He's crawling down. We have an extra panel's worth of space. And what we could use that for is here when he leaps off the wall to jump onto these enemy machines coming towards this fortress. Because he's like, well, maybe I can work with these guys. Maybe they'll be more cooperative than the people I just escaped from. He leaps and he's all curled up. Why? Because there's not enough room in the panel for him to show that leg stretched out and pushed off. Like, just look, I know it's not the same thing, but right here in the letters page, we have this picture of Submariner moving through the water. Who looks more powerful? Who looks like they're moving faster? Submariner, now I know he's swimming, but his body is stretched out and pushed away, whereas the Hulk is all curled up in a little ball. Have those legs extended like he's truly pushing with those mighty leg muscles to launch himself at this other mechanical and these other people. That's the best way to do it. And you get that by eliminating panels you don't need, like this one, where he's making a bigger hole that we don't see. I will say I do like this where he's crawling down and in the foreground we have the sirens, and then we switch to where we see the Hulk's point of view and we see the machines coming, and that part is great. I think that's a very nice change of angle right there. And then at the end he finds out who's the bad guy that the other people were worried about. It turns out to be the Executioner. So the Executioner is an immortal Asgardian, would have shown up in the beginning of Thor. It's not, I think it's Journey into Mystery probably is where the Executioner would have first shown up. He's a guy that was usually hanging out with like the Enchantress, maybe Hela, those kind of characters. So definitely going to be fun to see the Hulk come up against him and how do those two react. So that's where we leave the book. And now we can go ahead and cut over and wrap things up. So that's Tales to Astonish number 76, specifically the Hulk story. So that's great stuff. There's some really good things here. There's some things, obviously, I mentioned that I would do different. Now, part of the job that I have with these series is to kind of nitpick through, not just talk about the good stuff, but the bad stuff, and really use it as an educational purpose for anybody who is learning how to draw comics and wants to do that. We take what the masters have done, we take the good stuff they did, and we learn not to make the same mistakes they did. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So in terms of a rating, there's some decent action. I'd like a little more, but I know this is a big setup. But overall, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think it's a pretty solid story so far. Interesting to see Hulk into the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing how more of it goes. So, of course, lend me drop your comments. Let me know what you think. Are you familiar with the Executioner? How do you feel about the Hulk being in the future? Do you like more of the story of him fighting, 20th century military versus futuristic 25th century soldiers? What do you think of this art team? Did you know about Gil Kane? Is that a new name for you? Or do you have some favorite Gil Kane work? And so this is maybe something in his credits that you weren't aware of. So drop those comments. Let me know. I love to see him. Thanks again for your time. Thanks for your support. And don't forget, we'll be right back here next week, same time, with more Incredible Hulk. Thanks.